Hey everyone, and welcome to the GRC Room for 5 questions. I'm Mike Andrews here once again with Karina Klever, and we're happy to welcome Jon Bosco, who's a managing partner at eDelta Consulting and CPA Services. Jon is a CPA with deep audit and technical expertise. How are you doing today, Jon?
Very good. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to yourselves today. Look forward to it.
Glad to get together. Without further ado, let me pass it to Karina for a brief intro and the first question.
I am Karina Klever of Klever Compliance. We are compliance management as a service provider, and these days we are having a lot of fun with busting tool lard, we call it. The first question is, which part of cyber GRC do you believe that businesses struggle with the most?
Firstly, we deal with businesses of all different sizes. Having a dedicated function that coordinates with all the different stakeholders and all the data points, that's the biggest challenges businesses have. Coordinating, centralizing, managing their compliance data, whether it be on a file system, whether it be within a GRC tool, or within multiple source systems that are centralized. I think that's the largest, most challenging process for an auditor as well as a compliance manager. And coordinating, indexing, that's the biggest challenge, I think, what I've seen in large or even small organizations.
And I think what I want to add to that is at the very beginning of that process of defining the work stream and the flow of controls, gathering the evidence, doing the risk assessments against failed controls, that very beginning, making the controls appropriate to your actual true operations. We seem to be missing a lot of that in our industry, right? Because the controls are written to be ethereal, nebulous, and vague by design, but we're going to go ahead and try to adopt all 12,700 of them, right? On the spreadsheet, right? So there's got to be kind of that stop point that says, wait a minute, let's really take a look at our operations. And I always love to use the 21 CFR out of my pharma days. You know, I think it's title 135, 115 or 115, 135 that says, if you make goat milk ice cream, you have to use goat milk. Well, if you're a pharma company that doesn't make goat milk ice cream, you know, just explain why this doesn't apply to you and move the hell on, right?
Right. So, there's two pieces to that, right? There's the tactical, which I had initially gone in, which is the largest effort, or just coordinating compliance data. And then to your point, it's the risk assessment.
Correct.
And even in the performance of SOC engagements, educating our customers in terms of what a good risk assessment looks like is challenging. And on top of that, establishing a governance structure where we build risk appetites. The risk appetite statement is probably one of the most challenging things to basically address. How much risk is a business willing to take? And then coordinating and quantifying it, even and determining what's material, it is definitely challenging.
Well, what we're missing right now very clearly is we're implementing these risk frameworks, but they're not touching our true controls. So we're not actually saying, here's my control, oh wait, it's failed. That failure generates that risk now that I can mitigate.
That was a great exchange. The second question, we've seen so many data breaches. It seems like there's a new big one like every month, maybe even every week mentioned. Jon, what's one data breach that stood out to you the most and why that one?
The F5 breach that has just recently occurred. Obviously, information is coming out and continues to come out recently. Obviously, the nation state threat actor is a little bit concerning, but more importantly, F5 being an industry stalwart that many institutions use, and then the loss of source code and the ability to de-engineer the code and the catastrophic consequences of a nation state having that, and the implications in the supply chain that may have ramifications over a significant amount of time that we've just begun to potentially realize. And by the way, source code probably and overall is obviously a very useful data point. Hasn't necessarily been the target of historical attacks, but definitely is something not just for the intellectual property that some of these companies are attempting to protect, but the potential threats to security that the code might emanate. And that's something that, once again, not just because of its recency, it's because of the nature of the information that has been stolen that we just don't know yet the implications of. And so that's kind of like, and once again, any significant breach, and I'm not saying F5 is critical infrastructure, and it might be, we just don't know where it might reside, but these network devices that may power significant critical infrastructure and the threats to it, that kind of emanated with me. And if anyone had lived in 2003 with the Northeast blackout, that clearly was a software flaw, but it wouldn't surprise me that these types of threats result in something as consequential or have significant magnitude to us.
Yeah, I was actually living in Brooklyn, New York during that in 2003. We were on a nighttime fishing boat coming back, and we're like, where's the world? Like, it seems completely, it was insane. I was like, I don't know what's going on here.
First of all, it was 100 degrees. It was 100 degrees out. I slept on the roof of a New York City apartment building because sleeping inside the building with no air conditioning obviously was untenable. So we slept outside on the floor, which was an extremely interesting experience, which we would like not to happen again because of a security issue. And that was obviously more of an operational issue, not a security issue, but certainly I could see in our future that these types of events might have catastrophic consequences.
Yeah, that's a scary breach you just brought up, because 1, nation state, 2, supply chain, 3, source code, and 4, F5 definitely is infrastructure. I don't know this breach as well as a lot of them, but with as deep into infrastructure as they are, I'm sure there's some aspects of critical infrastructure that they are touching. Karina, if you want to add anything to that or just move on to the next question, it's up to you.
I want to really quickly say, just for context, that the estimates are that F5's big IP servers are in 48 out of the top 50 countries globally. So please try to understand that impact, because if you're a top 50 company, that's your front line, right? So be extremely careful with prioritizing that. Okay, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Our next question is, what is the most impactful GRC-related advice that you ever received, Jon?
I've had a wonderful career, starting at EMY, being perhaps maybe one of the first college kids hired into what used to be the ISAS practice, the Information Security Advisory and Assurance practice. Having that opportunity to learn grassroots GRC years ago, and having industry stalwarts to learn from at that point in my career, I would say that, my experience kind of made me. And I would also say that I've taken a lot of the, knowledge that I had from my mentors, and I tried to instill that in my kids and my staff that I have. So really, honestly, grassroots control and risk blocking and tackling, just getting the foundational elements on how to understand risk and control, and be able to, support, your opinions or support your results, and learning how to write. And I know that AI is writing everything for us nowadays, but you need to be able to effectively, take information, process it, analyze it, and produce meaningful results that people could understand. And the most impactful thing for me is just the blocking and tackling that we need to do as security professionals or as compliance professionals. And I honed the writing craft during my career.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's great to see an auditor that has a risk focus, because so often auditors are focused on compliance. So with that being said, the fourth question is related. What do you do differently that allows you to excel in this field?
I think you have to be a little bit of a chameleon. I think that as an auditor or as a security professional, as a member of senior management, I think you need to sit in their chair as you approach your role. The ultimate goal is to understand the risks associated with the business, and it's not black and white. Just because a control fails doesn't necessarily mean that it emanates in a significant risk that warrants an overly engineered control. It's the composition of multiple controls that need to be considered, and then the risk to the business. And clearly, we drive based upon frameworks, but we need to really look at things at a more macro level when we analyze processes or analyze controls. And we definitely need to, sit in the chair of individuals in multiple positions. So anytime I do an audit and I'm auditing the CISO, I'm looking in the CISO's goggles and how they view risk, or the compliance officer's role, looking in the CCO role. And for me, honestly, I act as a DPO, I act as a CTO, I act as a CISO and an auditor. I've been able to transcend these roles and kind of evaluate the way I make decisions. And it's not just binary, it's financial, it's risk-based. All those things need to be considered.
So, and I'm going to chime in and completely agree in that it has to kind of pivot from being not only a top-down, but also a bottom-up, right? So I think that balance has to be found in the middle. Okay, time for our very last question. We're going to make it just in time. What is the one top thing that businesses can do today to strengthen their cyber GRC?
The biggest thing is to educate the entire workforce. Training and awareness and governance honestly has the largest impact with the lowest investment.
We have a specialist of that on my team, and it's incredibly interesting to see how the organizational change management shift and how long that culture takes to actually move, the thought of, I'm going to go hide down the hallway because I see the auditor coming, versus, right, embracing the fact that, hey, let me show you all of my paperwork and all of our training, right there. So that actually takes a lot, and it's a heavy lift. And it's a very tough job. Completely agree with you.
100%. It's great when you're in an organization and everyone's calling you to say, "Is this a phishing exercise?"
Right.
It's wonderful to have that level of interest in making sure that not only you're doing it for your business, but you're doing it for yourself. What you would do for a business, you need to also consider the things that you do in your life that protect your information. And that level of awareness needs to transcend in every aspect of your life.
Perfect.